Three, two, one. All right. Very nice to have you again. Go ahead and give me your name, age, and branch of military you served in.
Sure. My name is Thomas Bell. I am 35, and I served a little over 6 years in the Army and about 4 years in the Navy Reserves.
Awesome. So I'm going to start with some icebreaker questions, and then we'll move forward. So hot or cold?
Cold.
Inside or outside?
Outside.
Hamburgers or hot dogs?
Hamburgers.
TV shows or movies?
Oh, man, this one. TV shows.
Urban, suburban, or rural?
Rural.
I am
happy.
I love
I love my family.
I hate
I hate TikTok, to be honest.
The first thing I do when I wake up is
I listen to a video on YouTube that inspires and motivates me to, be a professional in everything I do. So
awesome. And every day I look forward to
every day I look forward to learning something new, either about myself or something I don't know.
Awesome. All right. So let's get into the first 6 years of you being in the military. So you served in the Army first, correct?
Yes.
So what were you, what operations were you deployed in while you were in the Army?
Sure. So I did Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Okay.
In 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
And then Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan, 2011 and 2012.
Okay. And so what was your job while you were in the Army?
My MOS, I was a 31 Bravo, which is a military police officer.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about being a military police officer.
Yeah. Before I came in, my dad worked for the sheriff's office in Sarasota County for, I think over 30 years. So I grew up, hanging around his friends and his police buddies. I remember when he was in like secret investigations or special investigations, like going to like a trailer behind a middle school with like all his buddies that were like long beards and ponytails, and they were doing narcotic buys, and I'm sitting there like doing my homework till my mom picks me up. So I wanted to be a police officer, but I was 19, and you can't be a cop when you're 19, in the States, but you can in the military. You can be a cop when you're 17 in the military. So
can you join the military when you're 17?
Yeah, I think your parents have to sign a waiver. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of people do that.
Interesting.
So yeah, I wanted to be, if I figured I'd take this sweet, 2-year contract, and then I'd be 21, when I got out with already military police experience. So because I didn't want to go to college, and I could roll right into a civilian law enforcement job. But being an MP in the Army is it's really cool. I mean, you get the best of both worlds in the military. So you get to do the law enforcement side, which is cool. Going on patrol, and you have your normal cases that you have in the civilian world. You have DUIs, traffic stops, domestics, all sorts of stuff. And when you're deployed or you're in a combat unit, you're going out on patrols and doing everything the infantry would do. One thing about being an MP is the civilian job of a police officer is dangerous, and it's difficult and it's tough enough. But one thing about being an MP is everyone you encounter on the base has been trained. Like they've all been to boot camp. They all know how to handle weapons, and they know how to do unarmed self-defense, and so going to a domestic disturbance is dangerous enough in the civilian world, but you got to keep in mind that this guy may be a well-trained infantry guy who's been on multiple deployments. So But when you're deployed, when you're in a combat unit, which I spent most of my time in, I didn't work the road too much. Spent most of my time downrange, and one of the goals or medal is what they call the Mission Essential Task List for Iraq and Afghanistan, and part of the COIN or counterinsurgency strategy is to train local nationals in law enforcement. So train the local law enforcement. So that was our mission. It was a pretty high priority. So when I was deployed, that's what I did.
Awesome. You got? Did you ever have any interesting or like funny calls that you would get called to, and you're like, I don't know, just some strange thing happened or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you get all the same weird calls that civilian law enforcement gets. Noise complaints, people throwing parties, and you get you're on night patrol and you pull down a street, and there's a car parked there, and I'll just check on this car, and it's like two high school kids making out or whatever. You kind of have to ruin their night. Y'all can't be parked here doing that.
Yeah. Anyone's come to mind though?
Not really for I do know of one. My buddy who was MP, he came from Fort Polk, Louisiana, and when he first got to Fort Polk, he reports in, and the sergeant major tells him to report to his unit, and his platoon sergeant goes, "Hey, you're the new guy. Go to the arms room and draw your pistol and your night vision." And he's like, "What?" Like, okay, so he goes and does that, and he gets on like a UTV or something, and kind of gets briefed on what they're doing, when they're going out, and they're like, yeah, a tiger got out of like a Louisiana zoo, and he's like, we have to go out and find it somewhere on post.
Oh my God.
And he's like, we're gonna walk through the woods with pistols and night vision trying to find like the king of the jungle. like there's no way.
Sounds like a Call of Duty
It
mission.
was real. I think they ended up like finding it, but they didn't have to shoot it. Like they have like a game warden type of staff on post.
okay.
I think they tranquilized it and
Okay.
relocated, but that's a crazy. It did happen to me, but
Yeah.
I've heard of them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after the Army, what did you do?
So after the Army, I got out. I didn't really have a plan. I don't recommend that
Right.
to anyone, to get out without a plan. But I thought I wanted to go in healthcare because
Helping people.
it pays good.
Yeah.
So my first job I got was at Sarasota Memorial, and I was like an OR tech, like they call it a clinical tech.
Okay.
And I got to work in the OR. And it sounds like an important special title, but basically
Yeah.
all I was doing was like mopping blood off the floor after like surgeries and like changing out equipment like in the OR for different surgeries, ortho beds and spine beds.
Right.
And while I was doing that, I was going to State College of Florida, which used to be MCC, Manatee Community College. And then I ended up getting a job in Tampa as an anesthesia technician,
Okay.
which was really cool because I didn't have to like mop the blood off the floors. Like it was pretty much assigned to like anesthesia, and that was it.
Yeah.
So worked in hearts, ortho, trauma, neonatal open heart surgery. And then I was going to Hillsborough Community College, and I thought, like I want to do anesthesia. I want to be a CRNA,
Right.
nurse anesthetist. And when I was going through the nursing side of school, I was like, man, this is like not me. Like,
Yeah.
and like you're inside like all day, like especially if you're on call, like 12 hours. Like you come in and it's light out, and then when you leave, it's like pitch black, dark outside because you've been inside all day. Like you don't know what time it is. So left that job to go back home to Sarasota, and then I went to firefighter EMT school at Suncoast Technical College,
Okay.
STC, and then EMT school at the same place, and then I became a firefighter EMT. And while I did that, joined the Navy Reserves as a corpsman, and went to corpsman school in San Antonio, and came back. And then my wife, we had our daughter who's now 2, and my wife got a job. She's working in Bradenton as a firefighter EMT, and my wife's like, oh, I got this job teaching. My wife's she's a physician assistant.
Okay.
But she also has a master's in education as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's finishing her doctorates right now in medical science. But she's like, oh, I got this job, but it's down at Fort Myers.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, like, where's that at? FGCU.
Okay.
So I was driving like an hour and a half to work every day. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. So, my degree, I enrolled here, and my degree was in biology.
Okay.
But I still wanted to be outdoors. I don't think I wanted to work like in the hospital and like
Right.
every day. So switched my degree to environmental studies, and then just recently got hired by the National Park Service to be a federal law enforcement officer in the national parks.
That is awesome.
Yep.
Very awesome.
Kind of left the Navy. I didn't really like the reserves too much.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So how is it like in difference between the Army and the Navy?
It's like comparing apples to oranges, like night and day.
Really?
So I was active duty Army, so,
Right.
I was a sergeant, it's in the regulation. You pass an NCO, a non-commissioned officer, or sergeant, give them the greeting of the day. When lower enlisted talk to you, they talk to you at parade rest with their hands behind their back.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sergeant, no, sergeant. Then I show up to the Navy Reserves, I sign my contract and I join, and they basically give me a box when I show up. Was at NOSC, Naval Operations Sports Center, Tampa,
Okay.
out in McDill. Give me a box of like these uniforms, and like I've never worn a Navy uniform in my life. So like like the classic blue Navy uniform where
Yeah.
it has like the buttons all in the front.
Right.
Like when I put it on, like I put the buttons in the back, and like the lady at the tailor place was like, no, like the buttons go in the front. I was like, oh well, the strings in the. So but I was a petty officer second class, and these lower enlisted E1s, E2s came up to be like, oh, what's up, Bill? Like, who the heck do you think you're talking to?
Yeah.
I'm an NCO, dude. And some of the guys were like, hey, calm down. It's like, this is the reserves. And I'm like, I don't
Things run a little different.
Yeah, like I don't like that, and you got to show up, and it's like one weekend a month, where you got to do all this stuff, and no, I don't know, I just didn't like it.
What was the biggest thing you didn't like about the Navy?
The biggest thing, well, it's not the Navy, it's the Navy Reserves, like the
Okay.
reserve component. The biggest thing I didn't like was like there's a massive amount of work you have to get done in that one weekend in the month that you can't possibly do.
Right.
So it's, if you have like a full-time job and you're going to school like I did, like your section leader may call you and be like, hey, I need like evaluations on these 2 sailors tomorrow. I'm like, it's Wednesday, like I'm not like at drill.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of work you had to do on your own time, and I just didn't have the time for that. And I don't think like ultimately where I wanted to go, like to become a national park ranger, law enforcement officer, like
Yeah.
it wasn't like helping me get there.
Right.
You know.
So is the reserves more like office jobs, kind of, or?
I mean, they have all sorts of jobs. Like, you know, as a corpsman, I was assigned to a hospital unit. So
Okay.
when I did like my, you know, my 2 weeks out of the year, you know, for my what do they call it when you do the 2 weeks out of the year? Annual training. I had to go up to Naval Hospital Jacksonville and work in the hospital, you know, and I did like, you know, this was the height of COVID, so I did COVID screenings. You know, I did 1,700 COVID screenings in 2
Oh my
weeks.
God.
You know, like that was all I did.
Jesus.
You know, so it wasn't like very like, you know, like sexy or exciting.
Yeah.
You know, but there were some other guys who were in like the Brown Navy. You know, there's guys on the boats, you know, doing cool stuff in
Okay.
in dive medicine. That's cool, and aviation medicine,
Dive
but-
in aviation medicine. What is that?
Yeah, so you have like DMTs, which are dive med techs.
Okay.
So those are the guys who are like run the hyperbaric chambers for like the Navy dive teams.
Oh, okay.
And then you have like aerospace corpsmen, which
Wow.
do like flight physicals for pilots and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So like I mean I was just like a regular hospital corpsman. I didn't have like a specialty,
Yeah.
so
Understandable. So, what compared to that? What did you not like about the Army, active duty? And what did you like?
I loved the active duty Army.
Mhm.
There's going to be things like, I mean, while I was in, there was stuff I didn't like. I didn't like the fact that as a sergeant, you're assigned like two soldiers. So I had a driver and a gunner.
Right.
Shout out Ketter and Schoolcraft. They were my dudes. They're awesome. But ultimately, I was responsible for them.
Yeah.
So if one of your guys decides, he's going to go out and drink and drive, he gets hooked up by the local police and sent back to the PMO, which is the Provost Marshal's office, which is the police station on post. You'll get like a text or a call from your first sergeant. You'd be like, hey, Schoolcraft just got hooked up for DUI. Schoolcraft didn't, but let's say your guy just got hooked up for DUI. You need to go pick him up at the PMO. This could be like 3 o'clock in the morning. You need to go pick him up at the PMO and meet me in my office first thing, 8 o'clock in the morning. So
What if you're asleep?
you better wake up. He's your responsibility.
Fair enough.
So I mean, I don't like that, but with rank comes responsibility,
Of course.
and it's your job to mentor those guys and show them the right way and act as an example.
Yeah.
It's just minute stuff I didn't like. I didn't like maintenance Mondays.
Okay.
So maintenance Mondays, like every Monday, you had to go down to the motor pool and PMCS vehicles, like preventive maintenance and checks.
Right.
And you have to do it like by this manual that's like 9,000 pages. It's like check oil fluids. You like check all the grease points in a Humvee. Like I don't know how many grease points there are. It was probably I don't remember the manual. It was probably like 40 grease points. Little nipples. Make sure that they're full of grease and I didn't like that. But like in the position I'm at now, like looking back on it in hindsight, like I loved everything about it.
Right.
It was cool. It was your job like 24/7.
Mm-hmm. So looking back on it in hindsight, if you had the ability to change either the Army or the Navy Reserves, what would be like the first thing you'd be like, this would like, I want this different? Whether it be like something that you think would help the military complex as a whole, or just something you're like, I just think that's annoying.
In the Navy Reserves, I think they need to fix like their administrative side.
Right.
So like, putting in requests and information and stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
but that I think that's across the board in all military, like
Yeah.
stuff gets lost. When I first got out of the Army, they give you a DD 214.
Yeah.
Your certificate of discharge.
Right.
And the guy's like, how many copies do you want? And I was like 50. And he was like, all right.
Just in case.
And I had
you
like
know?
50 copies because they're going to get lost.
Yeah, of course.
So, but I mean, I don't know if that's something they could really fix. I would kind of. I mean, the annual trainings, I understand them, but in the sensitivity training, it's there.
Right.
But I think I would kind of arrange it in a way where it's not as frequent. Once a year, I guess is fine. But I don't know. I like what the Army's doing with the new PT test. I mean, it's
What's
like
in the new PT test?
so it's like a friggin' CrossFit,
Really?
game. It's I don't know everything about it because I've been out, since they put it in, but it's like like ammo can carries, like fireman carry. Then it's like a deadlift, and like sprints, and then there's a run in it, and there's pull-ups. Like it's
Oh,
extensive.
jeez.
So I like what they did with it. I think it's pretty cool.
Hmm.
But in terms of changing it, like I don't know, it's a tough system to change. I mean, it's been around since the 1770s.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I have noticed, with interviewing these veterans is the higher up in like the military complex, like it's kind of like almost set in stone with like how they take care of things, and how routine their processes are. But I do think one idea that I kind of got from this, my dad, he was telling me about this. He was saying, maybe these interviews, if they could be, a government contract, before a veteran gets out of the military, they would have to, how you have to go through a bunch of checklists before you get out. One of them would be having an interview and basically going over their service, going over how everything was from their unit to their whole platoon. And so in that way, it would serve as like
an exit interview.
Yeah, like a database. So, just in case, say this company is going off the rails. Okay, well, let's see who was in the company. Let's see their interviews. Let's see what they described.
Right.
And, if and then from there, they could be able to potentially fix the problem.
Right.
But, with the interviews and the people that I've talked to, they've all kind of said, the military kind of it changes a little bit, but there's always things, especially with like leadership and stuff like that, that is kind of hard to change.
Yeah, and that's going to be anywhere. That's going to be in the civilians. Anywhere you work, you're going to have bosses you don't like.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about the Army, is you PCS every 2 to 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
So you're changing your duty station. So it's just, if you don't have a good command, I'm a big believer in like you shouldn't allow other people to dictate how you feel.
Mm.
Like if you're in a good place in your head, like emotionally, physically, spiritually, I look at it as I look at it in a different way. So like if I have a leader in the military who's like coming down on me hard and like, acting crazy, like now, if I had my mind frame that I have now, like back then, I would say like, man, like I wonder what he must be going through or she must be going through to be this way.
Of course.
And you kind of feel sorry for them. Compassion is a big thing. Like try to see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't let other people dictate how you feel about yourself.
I agree. I definitely agree. So overall, looking back on your service, do you feel like you made, a pretty or at least some sort of impact, either, on the people or maybe the people you trained or, the people that you were assigned to or that were assigned to you, or maybe even just the Army as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I when I got assigned my 2 soldiers the first time I was in a leadership position, I was actually a specialist. I was an E4. I wasn't even an NCO.
Right.
But I already had a deployment under my belt, and they didn't. And I fell in love with training and mentorship and leadership,
Mm-hmm.
When I got that role.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the fact that, I could say, hey, guys, what do you want to learn about? Like, we want to learn about how, like, CQB and clearing rooms.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that, it forced me to go back in the manuals and study myself and be, like, a master of I always say, like, whenever I have soldiers or whenever I'm mentoring someone, like, the biggest thing in the military, you can go very, very far in the military and in the civilian world. I always say, like, master the basics. So it forced me to kind of do that, to master the basics. And then, teaching my guys, I love the fact that, I could teach them, what I know, and then they go on and do like a training evolution,
Mm-hmm.
and they do really, really good.
Yeah.
And I'm not there, and it's a good thing for them, and it also reflects very, very well on you.
Of course.
It makes you a good leader.
Yeah.
Makes you stand out.
Right.
So I love training, and I loved like getting to know my guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew their birthdays, I knew their wives, their kids.
I'm sure you still do.
Yeah, and I would always check on them at their house, and have barbecues on the weekends and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a cool, like, tight knit community.
Right.
Amongst a big giant, basically, fraternity.
Yeah. Sorry, could you just move the microphone?
Sure.
Tired of trying to look at you and the microphone's in the way.
Yeah.
So, for someone going into the military, what do you think the military can provide for them?
Discipline, leadership, responsibility. The acronym leadership in the Army, I don't know if it's still like the acronym now, but it's leadership, LDR, SHIP, so loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. And those are the things you're going to get out of the military. Like you get out of it what you put into it. So for me, like when I joined, out of high school, I played college football in North Carolina for a semester, and I think I was just too irresponsible to be left on my own.
Right.
So, I just never went to class and just went to football and came back, home and was living at the house. And, I think I was working as like a concierge or something at the mall, like handing out gift cards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My dad was like, "Oh, you can't just sit here on the couch and watch TV." I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna join the Army." It was like 2007 when like Iraq and Afghanistan were like full blown. But my time in the military, it really instilled in me like integrity, doing the right thing even when no one's looking, and like responsibility. So when I transferred here to FGCU, like my GPA was like a 2 point nothing, and now I have like a 3.67 GPA or 3.68 or whatever it is. But it teaches you to be like, you want to be the best in everything you do.
Of course.
And there's like this like internal competition when you get in the military, because no one wants to be like, like
Second
the
best.
third best or
Yeah.
second best. Like no one wants to like deploy with someone who barely passed combat lifesaver.
Exactly.
So, and then it carries over when you get out. I still wake up, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning every morning, just to get the day started.
Yeah, you showed up 30 minutes early to the
Yeah,
interview.
yeah. You're on time. You're late. you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
So, and that's like the little things that the Army is going to instill in you. The military is going to instill in you, that if you really stick to it and you put in, you're going to get out like all those little things that are going to make you extremely successful, in your civilian career.
Right. So from your service, do you have any memorabilia that you've collected, during your time that you still hold on to?
Yeah. So I wear, it's called like a KIA band or remembrance band.
Okay.
It's for Sergeant William R. Wilson III. Says Alpha 228 Infantry, KIA, killed in action, 26 March 2012, Afghanistan.
Do you want to go a little bit into that?
Sure. So when I was in Afghanistan, our job was to train ALP and ANP, so Afghan Local Police, Afghan National Police.
Oh, okay.
So we were training a group of, I think, ALP in Kopsar Hausa, which is in Paktika province. And Sergeant William Wilson was he was in Alpha 228 Infantry, which was the unit that basically occupied Kopsar Hausa.
Okay.
And we trained, we left our base, FOB Rushmore, out of Sharana and flew in there. Or I think we drove down there, actually. Trained these ALP for like a month. And when we went back to Rushmore to rotate out to, fly somewhere to train another, unit, we heard that Sergeant William Wilson was shot and killed in Sarhausa. And he was actually shot and killed by local police.
Wow.
I think they were occupying a checkpoint, and I don't know if they. I don't know too much about the details because it's not really out there.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if, they thought they were Taliban or other military force, and they opened up on them. I don't know if maybe the guy who shot him actually had ill intent towards him.
Yeah.
Like
What do you
maybe in the
think?
Taliban. I'm to be honest, I'm not sure. Like it could go either way. Like it's very hard. It's very hard to say that they thought they were Taliban. Like the Army just looks different.
Yeah.
The Taliban's not running around with, multicams and
Yeah.
and like 12-man patrols
Exactly.
and big giant trucks. But my whole unit, we felt a certain responsibility for him, for his death, because we were the ones that trained those guys.
Yeah.
So it was really really tough on us, and that's why, you know, I always kind of wear the band just to remind myself, you know, about responsibility and just kind of, you know, remember his name and, you know, what he did for this country.
Right.
He lived in Buffalo, New York, and he was posthumously promoted to staff sergeant at his funeral.
Wow.
So yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, you know, I can't even imagine, you know, knowing somebody for however long and then, you know, not even being around, just hearing that, you know, they got shot and killed. You
Yeah,
know?
and the thing was is you know, our unit, you know, went to so many bases and trained so many guys that, you know, we kind of met these infantry guys, and you know, maybe I knew him for, you know, a couple months, but he was just like the coolest dude, you know, like he always stuck up for, you know, like the younger guys. You know, he never walked around like I'm a sergeant, you know, you're gonna address me. Like he was always like kind of cool, laid back. I remember one time we got an LCLA drop of supplies, like a low cost, low altitude drop of supplies, and they're on these like crappy parachutes that sometimes don't even work. And he's like taking the parachutes and like making them into like kites and stuff, you know, like flying them like on patrol. He was just like a super cool dude. He like always had a smile. You know, you can look him up after this. There's a bunch of pictures of him online, but
Yeah.
like every picture he has, like always a smile. You know, and he's just a super cool dude.
Well, my condolences, you know, but, so can you tell me a little bit about, you know, what you would do in training the local like population to become police?
Sure. So the thing with training, like the local, I mean, it varies widely. The difference between like training the Iraq police and Afghan police is like way different.
How so?
So when we did in Iraq, they had like established structures, like police stations. Like they
Oh,
had like
okay.
actual. I mean, Iraq had like actual buildings and
Yeah.
cities, and I mean Afghanistan does too, but it's far more rural than it is like a city. Like the biggest city is like Kabul, you know.
So Iraq is more city-like?
Oh, for sure. Like if you go in Baghdad, like there are like traffic jams, cars everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Like they have an international airport.
Huh.
Like and they had like structures already,
Yeah.
you know, and like vehicles.
Yeah.
So training them was more about just like anti-corruption, you know, what's the right thing to do, you know,
Right.
tactics. We didn't do too much firearms training with them, but like, I mean, the corruption was rampant. I mean, in both parts, like we gave, you know, Iraq police officers like Glock 19s, and then like one day we'd show up and we'd be like, "Where's your pistol?" You know, and like 20 pistols would be missing. Like they just sold them. You know, like,
Oh my God.
they just like sold them because they're worth more money. You know, so training them was like mostly like anti-corruption, like it just like common sense stuff. Like, dude, you can't sell your pistol.
Yeah.
You know, like how to run a checkpoint. You know, how to do an investigation. How to handcuff someone. You know, like basic stuff like that. Now you go to like Afghanistan, like some of these guys, like we had to go and like teach them like this is how you wash your hands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like this is then we had to work from there to like operating a checkpoint where you're searching for IEDs, you know. So we had like we'd open a truck, you know, and one thing I look for when I'm looking at an engine block, you know, if it's a 1987 Toyota Hilux,
Yeah.
which is like a Tacoma over there, and I'm looking at this engine from 1987 or whatever, and there's a brand new silver pipe running through the middle, like
That doesn't look good.
yeah, it doesn't look right. So you got to teach them stuff like that. You know, like you had to go from like basic, like personal sanitation
Wow.
to like how do you operate a patrol, like how do you interrogate people, like, but mostly like running checkpoints and stuff like that.
Yeah. Was there any situations, you know, during your time training the population where, you know, a situation went bad or, you know, something happened or anything anything kind of going off the rails a bit? with in regards to like training and stuff.
Yes. So like, well, um, there's been multiple times where, you train these guys, and then we're like, all right, I think we feel good about them. You guys can run this checkpoint on your own. And then you're driving down the road and you get hit by an IED
Ugh.
and it's like a quarter mile from a checkpoint.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's no way you guys did not see this, And when we were training a group in Afghanistan, we trained them up, 3 weeks at a time.
Right.
And I guess there's like a Taliban guy who infiltrated the group. So he went through the whole training, did everything. And then at the graduation, you have like, the leaders of the Afghan National Police, and there's a bunch of other, U.S. military guys and, people who trained them. And at the graduation ceremony, they're in formation, and this guy just like detonates himself, So yeah, there's stuff like that, like big hurdles, and you never really know like who, because you don't go home with these guys, and it may not even be that they were in the Taliban. The Taliban or Al Qaeda may have said like, hey, at this graduation, you're gonna wear this and you're gonna blow yourself up, or we're gonna do something bad to your family.
Okay. Wow.
So it's just you never really know like who's who.
That just hearing that just sounds terrifying.
Right.
Just like you never know, but how I can't even imagine like just being in a place and then somebody just blowing up.
Right. It's wild.
How would you like describe that experience?
I think it's just like disbelief. You're like, am I in a movie? Like, what just happened? And then afterwards, you feel a sense of like, like responsibility. Like, should I have known? But I don't think you can like hold on to those emotions. Like, there's no way you could have known. Like, for all intents and purposes, like he could have been doing that to save his family.
Yeah.
And would I do the same thing in his place? I don't know. But like it's disbelief, shock, fear, anger. Like it's multitude of emotions.
Yeah.
Responsibility.
Do you feel like that? Do you feel like that responsibility side, that kind of like goes into survivor's guilt, and like, you said you feel a bit of a responsibility, but you can't really hold those emotions. Do you feel like that's kind of similar when looking at like survivor's guilt? Like say when your friend when he passed. I'm sure you definitely felt that survivor's guilt, and I'm sure you do to this day. But do you feel like that is something that you should hold on to, the memories that you shared with him, and remembering him in that sense? But the negative side of the survivor's guilt, the depression and the anxiety of I should have been there to do that. Do you feel like that's kind of like the similar feeling that you felt when you were when you experienced that?
I don't know, because I didn't really like know, and none of our guys got hurt in that, and but you just kind of feel not really survivor's guilt, because I mean if you hold on to that and you have that survivor's guilt, it's gonna jack you up for the rest of your life.
Definitely.
And it's something I'll deal with the rest of my life, but like the way I look at it, and I guess the way I like rationalize it, is like I can't go back and change anything.
Of course.
So there's no, it's not productive to hold on to it and think of it that way.
Right.
You can just say, I did the best I could. I did what I thought was right. And like in terms of Sergeant Wilson, like it's, I just try to remember, not that, I remember his death, but like try to remember like the good times with Sergeant Wilson, like who he was.
Yeah.
And I think when I think about it that way, in that light, like it's special. Like he was a really good dude. And I try to like, it makes me, live my life better, because like he had a, he was an awesome guy. unfortunately died, but I'm gonna live my life, better because he can't.
Of course.
So that's kind of how I look at it.
That's a good way to look at
Yeah.
it for sure. So let's talk a little bit about you getting out of the military. So how did you get out of the military? So it was. I'm sorry. Just go ahead and continue.
Yeah, so I got out. I was stationed in Germany, and I got out in like 2013, I think,
Okay.
and just came back from Afghanistan. And I don't think I really liked my command, and I think I was like, after 2 deployments, I was kind of thinking like, is this going to be the rest? Because I was at that point where I was like, this is going to be my career, or I can get out, take these like life lessons and everything I learned in the Army and like apply it to like a civilian life,
Right.
and take basically like try again,
Mhm.
like at education. Like I really learned the value of education like when I was deployed, like because there's guys getting blown up, coming back with like they're 19 years old with no arms or no legs, and like they don't have an education, or any like skills.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I don't think I like really liked my command. Like looking back on it, I probably should have just stayed in because I liked what I was doing and I liked it. But it's a blessing in disguise. I got out and took school like a lot more seriously, and like really kind of like turned my life around. But the transition thing, like nothing could have prepared me, like because I got out without a plan.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was gonna do, and like nothing could have prepared me for like how hard like transitioning
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. So let's get a little bit into your actual transition. So obviously coming out without a plan would makes things even more difficult than somebody who gets out with a plan. But how was it from all your experiences that you've had dealing with um, I guess the trauma?
Yeah. So recently, I just got approved by the VA for my disability.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, so I'm 100% total and permanent
Awesome.
disability for like TBI and PTSD.
Right.
And then I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But
Yeah.
so I think I didn't know how to deal with like my emotions or like the trauma, or I guess you can call it that, or my experiences
Yeah.
while I was deployed. But my PTSD and my transition, like my PTSD isn't like, I think it's like PTSD that are symptoms of a TBI.
And
And then like I heard, recently I was listening to a guy, he's like, there's like, and he called it like post-traumatic stress injury is what I'd like to call it, like not a disorder.
Okay.
And basically like being in those environments, like the fear center in your brain is like firing off, like you're in fight or flight mode when you're deployed for like 100% of the time for like a year, and then you come back. And my PTSD, I think was when I was younger, when I first got out, when I first transitioned, was based around like that need for like adrenaline.
Yeah.
So adrenaline is a super powerful like drug,
Oh, yeah.
chemical that your body secretes in fight or flight, and like you go through it and you get it for a year, and then you're cut like cold turkey.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't take the right avenues to deal with that. When I was first transitioning, like I resorted to like drugs and going out and drinking and like hanging around the wrong crowd. And it wasn't until I met my wife like years later that I found more productive ways to address my need for like that adrenaline and how to deal with my PTSD.
What were some of the ways that you were able to cope?
Sure. So one of them was like being the anesthesia technician in the hospital. That like kind of like got me that adrenaline because
Really?
yeah, especially when you work in like trauma. You know, so like they tell you, you know, on the radio, you know, in the hospital, they say, hey, you know, we're holding OR5 for a trauma, GSW times 5, you know, gunshot wound times 5. So you're running in there, like your adrenaline's firing, you're getting everything ready.
Things
like
got to be quick.
Yeah, they bring the patient in, and like I love that, you know. And then, you know, firefighting was another one, you know, running to a burning house, or, you know, some guys in cardiac arrest, or,
Yeah.
you know, kids drowning and stuff like that. And then I met my wife, and she introduced me like scuba diving.
Oh yeah.
And like scuba diving was like that was like the thing, at least that helped me the most.
Yeah.
Because it's still high risk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you run out of air underwater, you die. You come up too fast, you die. You know, a shark bites you, you know, you die. Like,
Yeah, you're in a whole
you
nother
know,
world.
but it's also like very like fulfilling, like to all your senses. So like
Right.
the sounds underwater, the feel of the water, you know, and it puts you in like that high risk environment, but it's controlled the
Yeah.
best you can control it. You know, you do your checks and on your, you know, you have your dive computer, and it's still high risk, but you're in control of it.
Yeah.
You know, to a point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's what really helped me with my transition. And unfortunately, that didn't happen for like years. You know, so I had to go through years of, you know, doing drugs and drinking and all that stuff to find out that that wasn't a productive way to deal with my emotions.
Yeah.
Or my need to participate in high risk activities. You know, I could have did something else. Could have went whitewater rafting, you know, or like skydiving. Yeah, yeah, like you can control it. It's still high risk, but it's controlled to a point. You know.
You ever skydive recreationally?
No.
No. You
No.
ever, you know, jump out of a plane?
No, I wasn't an airborne guy.
Really?
I was an air assault guy, so I fast roped out of helicopters, like
Ah.
100 feet and 100 meters in the air, like slide down a rope in a helicopter and stuff.
Not that much of a fan of heights, or
No, I don't think heights really bother me. It's just I don't think I've had the opportunity to jump out of a plane, and I don't want to pay like $1,000 to do it. I don't know how much it costs, but
fair enough.
but
Fair
like
enough.
you know,
Yeah. So let's get a little bit into your traumatic brain injury. So
Mm-hmm.
how did you get that?
so I think it's from I think it stems from like exposure to like artillery,
Okay.
and like rockets and mortars,
Right.
and it's just like constant pounding, you know, on your brain. You know, even like shooting inside like indoor gun ranges, or
Yeah.
like in guard towers. You know, guard tower is just like a plywood box, and you have a 50 cal machine gun, and you're ripping like 200 rounds off of it. Like imagine
Jesus.
the percussion, you know,
Yeah.
and the shock waves that come through there.
And probably no ear protection too.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, but no. But you know, one time when I was in Iraq, we got the engineers to like lay like a slab of concrete, and we had like a basketball hoop installed, so we had like a little half court basketball going,
Right.
and it's like 7 in the morning or something. We're getting ready to play basketball. I'm at the free throw line, and I just hear like boom, boom, and I look up, I'm like, what's that? And I hear a rocket like screaming in, and it hits probably like 20 yards away from me and blows up like a giant laundry trailer.
Good
It like
God.
threw me to the ground. Like I didn't know why I was on the ground. I'm like running, and like my brain's all scrambled. I'm like digging rocks underneath like a refrigeration trailer where we keep our food. And like my friends are yelling at me like across like the walkway, like the bunker's over here. Like, so I think that really like jacked my head up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think so.
and then I think like my PTSD are like symptoms of that.
Right.
You know, like symptoms of traumatic brain injury.
Yeah. Just being in a situation like that, your adrenaline is just going through the roof.
Right.
I cannot even imagine. That is insane. Well, so, you know, with what you know and what you've learned from handling your PTSD and your trauma, do you think there's anything that the community or your family can do better for yourself or other veterans in, you know, handling their transition back into civilian life?
Sure. I think one of them is like programs like this, like podcasts like this, like what you're doing, talking
Yeah.
to veterans. I think if the veterans willing to do it, it's very powerful to like to think and then talk about those emotions.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't want to talk about it, and that's fine. But I think you should talk to someone
Yeah.
about it. And you know, the big thing in the military is, you know, like when I was in, and you did post deployment health assessments like PDHAs, and then you had PDHRAs, post deployment health reassessments. So you did a PDHA after you got back, like I think within like a couple weeks, and then a PDHRA maybe like 3 months after that.
Right.
So, but you know, you want to keep doing the job. So when they say, "Hey, are you having thoughts, you know, nightmares or anxiety or anything?" you say no,
Yeah.
because you don't want to be flagged and not be able to deploy again.
Yeah.
So I think like, if you don't want to talk like openly about it or publicly, like you need to talk to someone.
Yeah. Just getting it out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when they do these like post deployment health assessments and post deployment health reassessments, like I think there should be like, I don't know if they do it now, but I don't know if there's like systems in place where like just because a guy, you know, is having these emotions, you know, send him to counseling, but don't flag him to be undeployable.
Yeah.
You know, if that's really what he wants to do, he really wants to go back there and loves what he's doing, like restricting them from that is just gonna like, you know,
Make it worse.
multiply the problems.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But I mean, we're at a point now, you know, in our society, in our community, where we're really, really starting to help veterans.
Yeah.
You know, it's becoming, you know, more of an awareness thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like, I don't know if I'm right on this, but I think like more veterans who deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan have committed suicide than were actually killed like in Iraq and Afghanistan,
Wow.
which is wild, right?
That is wild.
You know, so I think it's important that, you know, even if maybe if you know like a veteran who's having problems, maybe they don't want to talk about it,
Yeah.
but you need to let them know that you see them,
Yeah.
you know, like, and you hear them,
Yeah.
like, hey man, you're looking bad, like you're looking jacked up, dude, like what's going on, or like let's go somewhere, let's hang out,
Yeah.
you know. And just by, you know, being with them, you know, especially people who are alone,
Yeah.
like when I got out, I was alone, you know, so I think that's important.
Of course, yes. Definitely surrounding yourself with, you know, people that you care about for sure. And, you know,
And take up a hobby that like, you know, for me, like I needed something that was like risky or like adrenaline, had give me
Keeps
some
your mind running.
adrenaline. Yeah. And like take up a hobby, like, you know, some people lift weights, you know, to get their anger out or get their stress out. Like do that, take care of yourself. You know, surround yourself with good people.
definitely. And yeah, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do these interviews was, you know, I feel like a lot of veterans, you know, I learned a lot about, you know, veterans from Vietnam and, you know, how they were treated and, you know, they were basically like disrespected and they were unwelcomed.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And more especially unrecognized. And so the reason why I wanted to, you know, and it's that idea of, you know, veterans not being recognized for, you know, the things that they did, you know, I feel like that's still pretty prevalent. And I want to change that. I want to make sure that, you know, veterans are respected and,
Right.
you know, recognized for, you know, the things that they've done to better our country.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. All right. One more question. Is there any stories, any additional stories that you want to share, or any situations where, you know, you felt like you were maybe like a hero, or maybe like you didn't feel like a hero, but you actually like, you know, did something like quote unquote heroic?
I don't know. I don't consider
That's
myself,
kind of a tricky.
yeah. I don't like gloat or consider myself a hero. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I deployed and served my country, but
I feel like every veteran's a hero, you know?
yeah. I mean, even I mean, the fact that you raised your right hand and signed the dotted line, I mean, you're a hero.
That's something.
But I think like less than 1% of the population of the United States serve in the military,
Wow.
which is crazy. But we had a rocket attack like in Iraq. This base, we got rocketed like all the time.
Yeah.
And this base we were at, we had burn barrels to like poop in and pee in. Like we didn't have like running water, and like we were very, very proud of our chow hall, which was like a tent, like multiple tents like stringed together, and behind them were like these little like refrigeration like generator like trailers, and a rocket comes in and like hits the refrigeration trailer, and starts a fire.
Oh.
And I was with my buddy John Breyer, and I think he's still in actually. And John Breyer's like, "Oh, the chow hall's on fire." He's like, "We gotta put it out. Like, where are we gonna eat?" So we're like running out, and there's like, it just happens to be like a water tanker like next to the chow hall.
Yeah.
And like he's like, "Come on!" We run, and we grab this like the hose off the end of this water trailer, and we're like wetting down like this fire while rockets are coming in. We're like, because we gotta save like the food,
Jesus
like the
Christ.
food is worth
Of course.
more than our life.
Of course.
Like where are we gonna eat our powdered eggs? Like, and so we put it out, and then after the rockets stop, my squad leader comes up and he's like, "Breyer, Bell, we got to go over to the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center. We got to go talk to the battalion commander." And I'm like, "Oh, dude." Like, we didn't even do anything. And he calls us in there, and he's like, "Hey, were y'all the ones like putting that fire out?" And we're like, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "I'm going to put you in for an ARCOM for Valor."
Wow.
And he sends it up, and it got knocked down to like
What?
just a regular ARCOM,
Oh.
which is, I don't know, I don't care. But like, we were like, "Man, we just want to save the food."
Yeah, of course.
So-
Wow. Well, yeah, I think that's a wrap. Well, thank you. Loved hearing your stories. Thank you for being here and sharing your time with me.
Yeah, and what you're doing is awesome. I mean, I hope more veterans, who are willing, like, come forward and talk about, you know, the struggles and the highs and lows. I think it's very like therapeutic,
Definitely. And yeah, actually, I have a couple announcements. Troy wanted me to announce. So on April 3rd or April 7th, we're having FGC is having the talent show, so anybody can sign up. And on April 3rd, we're having the Southwest Florida Veteran Expo. So yeah, be sure to check that out. And yeah, that's a wrap.
All right, thanks, man.